My name is Sarah, and at 31, I'd become invisible in my own home, a ghost who cooked and cleaned while my husband's family lived their lives around me. When my mother-in-law called with her usual fake sweetness to announce I'd be hosting Thanksgiving for 30 people, something inside me finally snapped. 3 years of being treated like hired help at every family gathering, 3 years of my husband choosing his mother's comfort over my dignity, 3 years of disappearing into the kitchen while everyone else laughed at the dinner table. This time would be different. This time, when I smiled and said, "Perfect, but I won't be here," I meant every word. What happened next changed everything, and the truth that came out that day shifted the power in our family forever. If you are watching this video right now, I would love to know where you are from. Drop it in the comment section below. Hit that like button and subscribe to hear more stories about family relationships that take unexpected turns. The morning sun filtered through the kitchen blinds, casting lines across the counter where I mechanically prepared my coffee. Same routine, same mug, same exhaustion that had nothing to do with sleep and everything to do with the life I'd somehow fallen into. My name is Sarah, and at 31, I'd become something I never thought I'd be. Invisible in my own home, a ghost who cooked and cleaned while real people lived their lives around me. The coffee maker gurgled its final drops as I stared at my reflection in the microwave door. When had I started looking so tired? When had the spark in my eyes dimmed to this dull acceptance? I knew the answer, of course. It started 3 years ago when I said I do to Michael, not realizing I was also marrying his mother, Margaret, and her iron-fisted control over everything her son touched, including me. My phone buzzed against the marble countertop, the specific ringtone I'd assigned to Margaret making my shoulders tense before I even answered. Her voice burst through the speaker with that artificial sweetness that always preceded a demand. "Sarah, darling, I have wonderful news," she chirped, though we both knew wonderful in Margaret's vocabulary meant convenient for Margaret. "I've decided that Thanksgiving will be at your house this year. Isn't that marvelous? The whole family is just dying to see what you'll do with it." I set down my coffee cup slowly, feeling that familiar knot form in my stomach. The whole family? Oh yes, all 30 of us. You have such a lovely home. My son chose well, and it's high time you hosted. I'll send you the menu I've planned. Nothing too complicated, just the traditional 20 dishes we always have. You'll need to start shopping this week, of course. The menu. She'd already planned the menu for the dinner I'd be cooking in my house. The audacity should have shocked me, but it didn't. This was Margaret's way, steamrolling through life, flattening anyone who didn't move fast enough to get out of her path. "I hosted everyone at mine the last 6 years," she continued, her tone suggesting she was doing me an enormous favor, "but I think it's time to pass the torch. You've been in the family long enough to handle it." Handle it? Like I was being promoted to head servant. The memory of last Thanksgiving at her house crashed over me like ice water. I'd volunteered to help, foolishly thinking it would earn me some goodwill, and ended up spending 14 hours in her kitchen while she barked orders and criticized every slice, every garnish, every arrangement. When dinner was served, she'd presented everything as her own work while I stood in the corner, hands raw from washing dishes, watching the family laugh and toast her hospitality. I'd excused myself to the pantry and cried into a dish towel while 28 people enjoyed the meal I'd largely prepared. The year before that hadn't been much better. Easter, Christmas, 4th of July, every holiday the same story. Sarah cooks, Sarah cleans, Sarah disappears into the background while Margaret holds court. "Sarah, are you there?" Margaret's voice sharpened, the sweetness evaporating. "Yes, I'm here." "Good. I'll email you the guest list and menu tonight. Oh, and make sure to use the good china, not whatever discount set you usually use. We have standards to maintain." The line went dead before I could respond. Not that she expected one. Margaret didn't have conversations. She issued decrees. I heard Michael's footsteps on the stairs, that heavy tread that meant he was checking his phone while walking. He appeared in the doorway, already dressed for work in the suit I'd pressed yesterday, his attention split between me and whatever was on his screen. "Was that Mom?" he asked, though he knew the answer. Who else would call at 7 in the morning? She's decided we're hosting Thanksgiving. 30 people. He glanced up briefly, then back to his phone. Oh, that's nice. The house could use some life in it.
Nice.
30 people.
Nice.
Michael, that's in 3 weeks. I'd have to cook for 30 people, clean the entire house, decorate. Babe, you're overthinking it. He poured himself coffee from the pot I'd made, not looking at me. Mom's just trying to include you more. She used to complain that you weren't involved enough with the family, and now she's giving you a chance to shine. A chance to shine. Like I was auditioning for a role I'd never wanted. Besides, he continued, straightening his tie in the hallway mirror, Mom's used to big holidays. She's been doing them for decades. You'll be fine. Maybe ask her for some tips. He kissed my forehead, that dismissive peck that meant the conversation was over, and headed for the door. I've got a late meeting tonight. Don't wait up. The door closed with a definitive click, leaving me alone with the sound of the coffee maker's automatic shutoff and the weight of 30 place settings on my shoulders. I sank into the kitchen chair, the one with the wobbly leg Michael kept promising to fix, and let my head fall into my hands. How had I gotten here? This wasn't the marriage I'd imagined. This wasn't the life I'd planned. My phone buzzed again, a text from my best friend, Jenna. Coffee? You sound like you need it. She always knew. Somehow, Jenna always knew. An hour later, I sat across from her at our usual corner table in the little cafe downtown, the one that made lavender lattes and didn't judge when you ordered 3 pastries for breakfast. Jenna listened while I recounted the morning's conversation, her expression growing increasingly incredulous. Let me get this straight, she said, setting down her cup with deliberate precision. Your mother-in-law voluntold you to host Thanksgiving for 30 people with a menu she's choosing, and your husband thinks this is you getting a chance to shine? That's the summary, yes. Sarah. She leaned forward, her voice dropping to that serious tone she used when she was about to say something I needed but didn't want to hear. Why are you doing this to yourself? What choice do I have? She's his mother. They're his family. You could say no. The words hung between us like a foreign language I'd never learned to speak. I can't just say no to Thanksgiving. Why not? Jenna's eyes sparked with something, anger, maybe, or frustration. What's the worst that could happen? They get mad? They're already treating you like hired help. At least if they're mad, they're acknowledging you exist. It's not that simple. It's exactly that simple. You know what? Don't even say no. Just don't do it. I laughed, but it came out bitter.
Right.
Just don't show up to Thanksgiving. That'll go over well. I'm serious. She grabbed my hand across the table. What if you just weren't there? What if you took back your holiday? What if, for once, you chose yourself? The idea was absurd. Impossible, wasn't it? But as I sat there, feeling the warmth of my friend's hand and seeing the fierce protectiveness in her eyes, something shifted. A tiny crack in the wall I'd built around my acceptance of this life. They'd never forgive me, I whispered. Maybe that's not the worst thing, she whispered back. That evening, I stood in my bedroom, though it had never really felt like mine, decorated in the neutral tones Margaret had insisted were timeless, and stared at myself in the full-length mirror. The woman looking back at me was a stranger. When had I become this person who accepted orders like a soldier, who cooked meals for people who barely acknowledged her existence, who apologized for taking up space in her own home? My mother's voice echoed in my memory. Never let anyone make you feel less than you are, baby. You're nobody's doormat. She'd raised me to be strong, independent, to stand up for myself. She'd died 2 years before I met Michael, and sometimes I was grateful she never saw what I'd become. Other times, like now, I desperately wished I could call her, hear her voice tell me what to do. But I knew what she'd say. She'd say exactly what Jenna had said, only with more colorful language and probably some choice words about Margaret's character. I picked up my journal, one of the few things in this house that was truly mine, and opened to a fresh page. The pen felt heavy in my hand as I wrote. What if I wasn't here? The words stared back at me, dangerous and thrilling. What if I reclaimed my holiday? What if I chose myself? I wrote for an hour, planning something I couldn't quite believe I was considering. But with each word, each detail, the idea became less absurd and more necessary. This wasn't about revenge or petty rebellion. This was about remembering who I was before I became Margaret's unpaid caterer and Michael's invisible wife. Later that night, Michael came home as I was cleaning up from dinner, a dinner I'd eaten alone, as usual. He loosened his tie and grabbed a beer from the fridge, settling into his recliner with the remote. "Hey," I said, testing the waters. "What would you think if I wasn't here for Thanksgiving?" He laughed, not even looking away from the TV.
Yeah, right.
"Where would you go?" "I'm serious. What if I had other plans?" Now he looked at me, but his expression was amused, condescending. "Babe, you don't have other plans. Besides, Mom would flip. You know how she is about family holidays."
Yes.
I knew exactly how she was. But hypothetically. There's no hypothetically. You're hosting Thanksgiving. End of story. He turned back to the TV, channel surfing with aggressive clicks. "Can you grab me some chips while you're up?" I stood there for a moment, watching him dismiss me as easily as changing a channel. Then I went to the kitchen, got his chips, and placed them on the side table next to him. He grunted what might have been thanks. But as I walked back to the kitchen, I caught my reflection in the hallway mirror and saw something different. A tiny smile, a spark of something that looked like the woman my mother had raised. In 3 weeks, they expected me to cook, clean, serve, and disappear. In 3 weeks, they'd learned that expectations and reality don't always align. I went back to my journal and wrote one more line. "I won't be here." Then I practiced saying it in the mirror, watching my face transform with each repetition. The tired woman faded, replaced by someone I recognized from long ago, someone who knew her worth. "You want me to host Thanksgiving?" I whispered to my reflection, imagining Margaret's smug face. "Perfect, but I won't be here." The next family gathering was scheduled for Sunday dinner at Margaret's house, a weekly torture disguised as tradition. I'd spend the morning choosing my outfit carefully, not the floral dress Margaret always said made me look sweet, but a sharp black blazer and pants that made me feel like armor. Michael noticed, frowning as I applied lipstick in the car. "You look like you're going to a business meeting." "Just trying something different," I said, checking my reflection one last time. The woman in the mirror looked ready for battle. Margaret's house sprawled across 2 acres of manicured perfection, the kind of place that screamed old money even though Michael's father had earned every penny selling insurance. The foyer alone was bigger than our living room, dominated by a chandelier that required professional cleaning twice a year, a fact Margaret mentioned whenever possible. The usual suspects had already gathered: Michael's brother Tom and his wife Ashley, who'd learned to navigate Margaret's demands by becoming invisible, his sister Patricia, who'd inherited her mother's talent for casual cruelty, and various cousins and aunts who orbited Margaret like planets around a particularly vindictive sun. "Sarah?" Margaret's voice cut through the chatter. "There you are. I was just telling everyone about Thanksgiving. Isn't it exciting?" She stood in the center of her living room, holding court in a cream-colored suit that probably cost more than my monthly grocery budget. The family arranged themselves around her like a Renaissance painting, Margaret as the focal point, everyone else merely supporting cast. "So exciting," Patricia chimed in, her smile sharp as a blade. "Sarah's finally going to show us what she can do. I mean, besides her usual." She paused, pretending to search for words, simple fare. A few cousins tittered. Ashley shot me a sympathetic look, but said nothing. She'd learned, like I had, that speaking up only painted a target on your back. Now, Margaret said with false magnanimity, "I'm sure Sarah will rise to the occasion. Won't you, dear? After all, you've had 3 years to learn how we do things." This was it. The moment I'd rehearsed in the mirror a dozen times. I took a breath, felt the weight of my mother's strength in my bones, and smiled. "Actually, Margaret, about Thanksgiving. Oh yes. I've emailed you the menu.
Did you see?
I've added my grandmother's stuffing recipe. It's quite complex, but I'm sure if you follow the directions exactly." "Perfect," I interrupted, my voice carrying a calm I didn't entirely feel. but I won't be here. I'm not your maid. The room went silent. You could have heard a pin drop on Margaret's imported Italian marble floors. Margaret's face went through a series of expressions: confusion, disbelief, and then that forced laugh she used when she was buying time to formulate a response. "Oh, Sarah," she trilled. "You and your sense of humor. Though it's a bit inappropriate, don't you think?" "I'm not joking." I held her gaze, steady as a lighthouse beam. "I won't be cooking Thanksgiving dinner. I won't be serving 30 people. I won't be there." Patricia's mouth fell open. Tom choked on his whiskey. Even the cousins stopped their side conversations to stare. Margaret's smile hardened like cement. "I'm sure you're just overwhelmed. It's understandable. Perhaps Patricia could help you with the shopping." "I'm not overwhelmed. I'm done." The words rang out clear and final. Michael, who'd been across the room discussing golf with Tom, finally noticed the tension. He rushed over, his face flushed. "What's going on?" "Your wife," Margaret said, her voice dripping venom disguised as concern, "seems to be having some sort of episode." "I'm having clarity," I corrected. "I won't be hosting Thanksgiving. Find another venue." Michael grabbed my arm, not hard enough to hurt, but firm enough to convey his panic. "Can I talk to you privately?" He practically dragged me to Margaret's study, closing the door behind us with barely controlled fury. "What the hell are you doing?" he hissed. "You just embarrassed my mother in front of everyone." She embarrassed herself by assuming I'd comply with her demands. Demands? She's including you. This is what you wanted, isn't it? To be part of the family? I laughed, and it must have sounded unhinged, because he took a step back. "Part of the family? Michael, I'm the help. I'm the one who cooks while everyone else eats. I'm the one who cleans while everyone else relaxes. Your mother doesn't want me to be part of the family. She wants me to serve the family." "You're being dramatic." "Am I? When was the last time your mother asked me about my job? My interests? When was the last time any of them had a conversation with me that wasn't about what I could do for them?" He ran his hand through his hair, that gesture he made when reality threatened to penetrate his bubble of denial. "Look, just apologize. Say you're stressed with work or something. We'll smooth this over."
No.
"Sarah."
No, Michael.
"I'm done smoothing things over. I'm done pretending this is normal. I'm done being invisible in my own life." "You'd better fix this," he said, his voice low and threatening in a way I'd never heard before. "This is my family, and I'm your wife. Or doesn't that matter?" He didn't answer, just stormed out, leaving me alone in Margaret's study surrounded by photos of family gatherings where I appeared in exactly none of them. I took a moment to compose myself, then walked back to the living room. The conversation stopped the moment I appeared. "Everything sorted?" Margaret asked, her tone suggesting she expected capitulation. "Yes," I said simply. "I'll be taking a trip over Thanksgiving. You'll need to make other arrangements." Then I walked out, leaving Michael to make excuses or not. I no longer cared. The next morning, I opened my laptop and started searching for cabin rentals. I wanted something remote, peaceful, the complete opposite of Margaret's Thanksgiving circus. I found it on the third page of results, a modest cabin on Lake Serenity, 2 hours north, surrounded by nothing but trees and water. The photos showed a stone fireplace, a deck overlooking the lake, and most importantly, blessed solitude. I booked it for 5 days, Wednesday through Sunday. The confirmation email felt like freedom in digital form. But I wasn't done. If I was going to burn this bridge, I might as well add some fireworks. I called Maison Blanc, the high-end catering company in town, and arranged for a complete Thanksgiving dinner for 30 to be delivered to our address on Thursday at noon. Turkey, sides, desserts, everything Margaret's menu demanded and more. The price made me wince until I remembered the inheritance from my father sitting in my separate account, the one Michael didn't even know existed. "Would you like us to include setup and service?" the pleasant voice on the phone asked. "No, just delivery. They can serve themselves." I could almost hear Margaret's indignation at having to serve herself food someone else had cooked. The thought made me smile. Next, I called my lawyer friend, Diana, who'd been my college roommate and knew my situation better than most. "I need a favor," I said. A delivery on Thanksgiving Day. This sounds interesting. What kind of delivery? Remember those documents about the house? The ones proving my father left it to me before I got married. Diana whistled low. You're going nuclear. I'm going honest. Will you do it? With pleasure. I never liked that woman. I prepared the envelope carefully, including copies of the deed, my father's will, and a brief letter explaining that while I welcomed family to my home, I would no longer tolerate disrespect within its walls. I sealed it with wax, a bit dramatic, perhaps, but if I was going to make a statement, I might as well make it memorable. The week progressed with increasing tension. Michael had moved to the guest room, communicating mainly through huffs and slammed doors. Patricia called twice to mock my little tantrum, as she put it. Margaret sent daily emails with increasingly passive-aggressive subject lines. Thanksgiving menu, since you're apparently too busy. Family traditions, remember those? And my personal favorite, disappointed. I responded to none of them. Instead, I focused on my preparations. I cleaned the house meticulously, not for them, but for me, so I could return to a space that felt like mine. I stocked the fridge with easy meals for Michael, not out of obligation, but to eliminate any excuse for him to play the victim. I even prepared a simple instruction sheet for the coffee maker, though he'd lived here for 3 years. On Tuesday night, I packed my bags with the kind of care usually reserved for exotic vacations. Books I'd been meaning to read, the expensive wine I'd been saving, comfortable clothes that Margaret would call frumpy, and my journal, which had become my confidant through this journey. Michael came home late, as he had every night since Sunday's confrontation. He stood in the bedroom doorway, watching me fold a sweater. You're really doing this, he said, not a question but an accusation. Yes. You're really going to humiliate my family. I paused, considering my words carefully. Your family has humiliated me for 3 years. I'm just choosing not to participate anymore. This is insane. You're throwing away our marriage over one dinner.
No, Michael.
Our marriage has been eroding with every dinner where I'm treated like the help, every holiday where I disappear into the kitchen, every family gathering where your mother's comfort matters more than my dignity. This isn't about one dinner, it's about all of them. He shook his head, disgust clear on his face. I don't even know who you are anymore. That's the problem, I said softly. You never did. Thanksgiving morning arrived crisp and clear, the kind of November day that made you grateful for warm houses and family gatherings, unless you were deliberately abandoning both. I woke at 5, not from nervousness, but from a strange excitement. My bags were already in the car, hidden in the garage so Michael wouldn't see them. He was still asleep in the guest room, having come home well past midnight. I suspected he'd been at his mother's, strategizing how to handle my rebellion. I made coffee quietly, savoring the last morning in my kitchen before everything changed. The house felt different somehow, like it knew something momentous was about to happen. Or maybe that was just me, projecting my own anticipation onto familiar walls. At 6:30, I heard Michael's alarm. His footsteps were heavy, aggravated, as he made his way to the bathroom. I had one last task to complete. The note was simple, written on the cream cardstock I'd bought specifically for this purpose. Michael and family, enjoy your Thanksgiving. The house is clean, the coffee is made, and I've arranged a surprise for you all. I'll be back Sunday. Sarah. I taped it to the refrigerator with a strawberry magnet from our honeymoon in Florida, a bit of irony that satisfied something petty in me. Michael emerged from the bathroom as I was grabbing my purse. He looked at me with a mixture of disbelief and anger. You're actually leaving. I told you I would. My mother will be here at 10 to start cooking. Then she'd better bring groceries. His face went red. This is childish. You're acting like a child throwing a tantrum. I shouldered my purse and looked at him one last time. Children throw tantrums when they don't get what they want. Adults set boundaries when they're being mistreated. Learn the difference. I walked past him to the garage, half expecting him to follow, to grab my arm, to do something that showed he cared more about me than his mother's approval. But he didn't. I heard the bathroom door slam as I started my car. The drive to Lake Serenity was beautiful. The roads were mostly empty, everyone presumably home preparing their own family dramas. I stopped at a small town halfway there, picking up fresh coffee and pastries from a bakery just opening for the holiday. The owner, an elderly woman with flour in her hair, wished me a happy Thanksgiving. "Spending it with family?" she asked cheerfully. "Spending it with myself," I replied. She smiled knowingly. "Sometimes that's the best company." I reached the cabin by 9, just as the sun was fully warming the lake. It was even better than the photos. Rustic but comfortable, with a fully stocked kitchen I had no intention of using beyond making coffee and heating soup. The fireplace was already laid with wood, waiting for a match. The deck overlooked water, so still it looked like glass. I brought in my bags, connected my phone to the charger, and then did something I'd been looking forward to all week. I turned on the security camera app. We'd installed cameras after a break-in in the neighborhood last year. Michael didn't know I still had the app on my phone, didn't know I could watch the front door, living room, and kitchen from anywhere with cell service. I'd tested it earlier in the week, making sure everything worked. I set my phone on the coffee table, poured myself a glass of wine. Yes, at 9 in the morning, it was my holiday, and settled in to watch the show. At exactly 10 o'clock, Margaret's Lexus pulled into the driveway. She emerged wearing what looked like a new outfit, clearly dressed to impress the family with her hosting abilities. Michael met her at the door, and I could see him gesturing frantically, probably explaining my absence. She pushed past him into the house, and I switched to the kitchen camera just in time to see her discover the note. Her face was a masterpiece of emotion, confusion, rage, disbelief, and then pure fury. She ripped the note from the refrigerator and waved it at Michael, who stood there like a scolded child. Patricia arrived next with her husband, then Tom and Ashley, then the cousins in waves. Each arrival prompted Margaret to retell the story, her gestures becoming more dramatic with each iteration. I couldn't hear the words, but I didn't need to. The body language said everything. By 11, all 30 guests had arrived. The kitchen camera showed Margaret opening and closing cabinets, finding nothing but everyday dishes and basic ingredients. Someone, probably Ashley, bless her, seemed to suggest ordering food, but Margaret's expression shut that down immediately. The chaos was building beautifully. Cousins stood around awkwardly, children whined about being hungry, and Michael looked like he wanted to disappear into the floor. Margaret kept checking her phone, presumably calling me, though my phone remained blissfully silent on the coffee table. At 11:45, I opened a book and actually managed to read a few pages before the notification popped up on my security app. Motion at front door. I opened the feed to see 2 catering vans pulling up. The doorbell rang, and Michael answered, his confusion evident even through the grainy camera footage. The Maison Blanc team began unloading warming trays, carrying them into the house with practiced efficiency. The living room camera showed the family's stunned faces as the caterers set up a full Thanksgiving spread on the dining table I'd cleared the night before. Turkey, carved and ready. Sides in elegant serving dishes. Pies and desserts arranged on Margaret's precious silver platters. I'd left them out specifically for this purpose. Margaret found the invoice, of course. The caterers always leave one. She stared at it, then at the food, then at Michael, who threw his hands up in obvious confusion. The cousins, unaware of the full drama and probably hungry, began serving themselves. One of the children clapped excitedly at the dessert display. Even Tom cracked a smile, nudging Ashley and pointing at what looked like an impressive spread. But Margaret stood frozen, the invoice in her hand, her entire narrative disrupted. She'd wanted to paint me as the selfish daughter-in-law who abandoned the family on Thanksgiving. Instead, I'd provided a feast she couldn't take credit for, couldn't control, couldn't criticize. Patricia tried to salvage the situation, gesturing at the food dismissively, probably making some snide comment about store-bought versus homemade. But even she couldn't deny the quality. Maison Blanc was where Margaret herself ordered from for events she deemed too important to trust to anyone else's cooking. I watched them eat in confused silence for a while, then closed the app and walked out onto the deck. The lake stretched before me, peaceful and indifferent to human drama. I'd brought a sandwich from the bakery, and I ate it slowly, savoring every bite of bread I'd chosen, filling I'd selected, on a schedule entirely my own. My phone buzzed repeatedly. 17 missed calls from Michael, 12 from Margaret, various texts I didn't bother reading. But one number caught my eye, Ashley. Her text was simple. That was beautiful. Thank you for the food. And for the show. I smiled and deleted the message thread. No evidence. No trail. As the sun began its afternoon descent, painting the lake in golds and oranges, I thought about what was happening back at the house. Were they discussing me over the meal I'd provided? Was Margaret spinning some story about my mental state, my selfishness, my inability to handle simple family responsibilities? Let her. Let them all talk. They were eating food I'd paid for, in a house I owned, while I sat beside a lake finally understanding what my mother had tried to teach me. Self-respect isn't selfish. It's necessary. I raised my wine glass to the setting sun, to my mother's memory, to the woman I was becoming again. Happy Thanksgiving, I whispered to the lake, and for the first time in 3 years, I meant it. Back at the house, as I would later learn from Ashley, the meal had descended into awkward chaos. Margaret tried to claim she'd ordered the catering as a surprise, but the invoice with my name exposed the lie. Some relatives praised the food, others questioned why I wasn't there, and a few, the smarter ones, began to piece together years of observations about how I'd been treated. Michael apparently drank too much wine and ended up in a shouting match with Tom about loyalty and family values, which Tom countered with questions about why Michael let his mother treat his wife like hired help. Patricia's husband, usually silent at family gatherings, asked point-blank why they were all pretending this was normal, sending Patricia into tears of rage. The children, oblivious to adult drama, declared it the best Thanksgiving ever because no one made them wait to eat, and there were 3 kinds of pie. As evening fell over Lake Serenity, I lit a fire in the cabin's fireplace and opened my journal. Tomorrow would bring consequences, confrontations, ultimatums. But tonight, for the first time in years, I felt like myself. Not Michael's wife, not Margaret's personal chef, not the invisible woman in the corner. Just Sarah. And that was enough. That was everything. The morning after Thanksgiving arrived with fog rolling across Lake Serenity, turning the world into a watercolor painting of grays and silvers. I'd slept better than I had in months, waking naturally without an alarm or the anxiety of what Margaret might demand that day. My phone had finally stopped buzzing around midnight. 63 missed calls in total, 48 text messages, and 12 voicemails I had no intention of listening to. The silence felt like a luxury I'd forgotten existed. I made coffee in the cabin's simple kitchen and carried it out to the deck, wrapped in a blanket I'd found in the closet. The lake was invisible in the fog, but I could hear it lapping gently against the shore, a rhythm that matched my finally steady heartbeat. At 9, I turned on my phone's security app one more time. The house was empty except for Michael, who sat at the kitchen table with his head in his hands, surrounded by containers of leftover catering. He looked rough, unshaven, still in yesterday's clothes, the picture of a man whose world had shifted without his permission. I closed the app and opened my laptop instead, curious about the social media fallout. Margaret maintained a carefully curated Facebook presence, and several family members were prolific sharers of family gatherings. Patricia had posted first at 11 p.m. on Thanksgiving. Some people don't deserve the families they marry into. Thankful for those who understand loyalty and tradition. Subtle as a brick, that one. But then came the interesting ones. Tom's wife, Ashley, had shared a photo of the dessert table with the caption, "Grateful for unexpected kindness and generous spirits." Sometimes the best gifts come from those who aren't even present. A cousin I barely knew had written, "Interesting Thanksgiving this year. Makes you think about family dynamics and who really does the work versus who gets the credit." Food for thought. Pun intended. And then there was Margaret's post, shared at 2 a.m., clearly after several glasses of wine. Disappointed by those who abandon family when needed most. But we Richardsons persist. We don't run from responsibility. The comment section was a battlefield. Some relatives offered support, others asked pointed questions about what happened, and a few brave souls suggested that maybe I'd had my reasons. One comment from Michael's great-aunt caught my eye. "Margaret, dear, perhaps it's time to consider why she felt the need to leave." I screenshot everything, not for any particular purpose, but as evidence that I wasn't imagining the divide forming in the family narrative. My phone rang, Ashley calling, not texting. I debated for a moment, then answered. "Sarah? Thank God. Are you okay?" "I'm fine, Ashley. Better than fine, actually." "Where are you?" "Somewhere peaceful." "How bad was it after dinner?" Ashley laughed, but it sounded strained.
Bad.
Margaret tried to hold court like usual, but people kept asking where you were. Then someone pointed out that you'd paid for all the food, and she lost it. Started ranting about ungrateful women who don't understand family values. Sounds about right. But here's the thing, not everyone agreed with her. Tom actually defended you. Said he'd watched you work yourself to exhaustion at every family gathering while the rest of us sat around. Margaret called him a traitor. Tom defended me? I couldn't hide my surprise. Tom had always seemed as deeply under Margaret's thumb as Michael. Something shifted yesterday, Sarah. The mask slipped, and people saw how things really are. Even Patricia's husband made a comment about the family taking advantage of you. And Michael? Ashley paused. He got drunk. Very drunk. Kept calling you, leaving increasingly angry voicemails. Tom finally took his phone away and drove him home. He's supposed to go to Margaret's for Black Friday shopping today, but I don't think he's in any shape for it. Black Friday. Margaret's other tradition, dragging the family to stores at dawn to shop for Christmas decorations she'd inevitably declare inadequate. Another performance where I'd been expected to carry bags and fetch coffee, while she criticized everyone's gift choices. Ashley, can I ask you something? Why did you never say anything? All those times you saw how she treated me. A long sigh. Because I'm a coward. Because Tom and I are saving to buy a house, and Margaret promised to help with the down payment. Because I convinced myself it wasn't my business.
I'm sorry, Sarah.
I should have stood up for you. It's not your job to fight my battles. No, but it's my job to be a decent human being, and I failed at that. For what it's worth, you've inspired me. I told Tom last night that I'm done with the command performances. If Margaret wants to see us, she can treat us like adults, not servants. After we hung up, I sat with that information. The family was fracturing, dividing into camps. Part of me felt guilty. I hadn't wanted to destroy anyone else's relationships. But the larger part, the part that was finally breathing freely, recognized that I hadn't destroyed anything. I'd simply stopped enabling Margaret's toxicity, and the resulting explosion was her doing, not mine. By afternoon, the fog had lifted, revealing the lake in all its November glory. I took a long walk along the shore, picking up smooth stones and skipping them across the water, like I had as a child. Each stone that sank felt like another weight lifted from my shoulders. When I returned to the cabin, I had 3 new voicemails from numbers I didn't recognize. Curiosity won, and I listened. The first was from Michael's Aunt Louise, his father's sister who rarely attended family gatherings. "Sarah, dear, I heard what happened. Good for you. Margaret needed someone to stand up to her. If you need anything, call me." The second was from a cousin's wife I'd spoken to maybe twice. "Hi Sarah, it's Rebecca. Just wanted you to know that not everyone is on Margaret's side. What you did was brave. Enjoy your peace." The third made me sit down hard on the cabin sofa. "Sarah, it's Margaret." Her voice was controlled, icy. "I don't know what game you're playing, but it ends now. You'll come home immediately, apologize to the family, and we will never speak of this embarrassment again. If you don't, there will be consequences. You may have married my son, but you will never be a Richardson. You're nothing but a gold digger who got lucky. The prenup Michael signed makes sure you'll get nothing if this marriage ends. Come home now, or prepare to lose everything." Prenup? We didn't have a prenup. Michael had mentioned it once, early in our engagement, but I'd refused to sign anything, and he dropped it. Or so I'd thought. I called Diana immediately. "Please tell me Michael didn't forge my signature on a prenup," I said without preamble. "Hello to you too," Diana laughed. "How's the cabin?" "Diana, I'm serious. Relax. Even if he did, which would be incredibly stupid and very illegal, it wouldn't matter. The house is yours, pre-marriage inheritance. Your father's will is ironclad. And forging a prenup? That's fraud. That would end very badly for him, not you. Margaret just threatened me. Said I'll get nothing if the marriage ends. Margaret can threaten all she wants. She's not a lawyer, and she clearly doesn't know the law. Want me to send her a cease and desist? Not yet. Let her dig her own hole a little deeper first. That evening, as I sat by the fire with a book and a glass of wine, my phone rang again. Michael, from a number I didn't recognize, probably Tom's phone. Against my better judgment, I answered. Sarah? His voice was rough, hollow. Please come home. I told you I'd be back Sunday. Mom's losing it. She's calling lawyers, talking about having you committed, saying you're having a mental breakdown. I laughed, actually laughed. Let her try. I'm sure a judge would be fascinated to hear why taking a vacation constitutes a mental breakdown. This isn't funny. You've destroyed everything.
No, Michael.
I've revealed everything. There's a difference. She's saying you'll never be welcome in the family again. Was I ever welcome? Or was I just useful? Silence. Then, why are you doing this to me?
To you?
Michael, when did this become about you? When have any of my feelings, my exhaustion, my dignity ever been about more than how they inconvenience you? You're my wife. You're supposed to support me. And you're my husband. You're supposed to protect me, to choose me, to see me as more than your mother's personal chef. When did you last do any of that? He stopped, and for a moment I thought maybe, finally, he might understand. But then, you know how she is. It's easier to just go along.
For you, maybe.
Not for me. Not anymore. If you don't come back tomorrow and fix this, I don't know if we can come back from this. Maybe we shouldn't. The words hung between us, heavy with 3 years of accumulated truth. You don't mean that, he said, but uncertainty crept into his voice. Sunday, Michael. I'll be back Sunday. What happens after that depends entirely on whether you're ready to be a husband instead of Margaret's son. I hung up and turned off my phone.
Tomorrow was Saturday.
I had one more full day of peace before facing whatever came next. That night, I dreamed of my mother. She was sitting beside me on the deck, looking out at the lake, her hand warm in mine. You did good, baby, she said in the dream. You remembered who you are. I woke with tears on my cheeks, but a smile on my lips. Somewhere, somehow, I knew she was proud. Saturday morning brought unseasonable warmth, what my grandmother would have called fall summer, nature's last gift before winter truly set in. I took my coffee to the deck again, this time without a blanket, and watched the sun paint the lake in shades of gold and turquoise. At exactly 9 a.m., my phone buzzed with a text from Diana. Delivered the envelope to Margaret's house. Michael signed for it. Buckle up. I'd almost forgotten about the envelope in the drama of the past 2 days. The documents proving my ownership of the house, the letter stating my boundaries. The bomb that would shift the power dynamic completely. I turned on the security app, needing to see this unfold. The kitchen camera showed Michael at the table, the manila envelope unopened in front of him. He was on the phone, gesturing animatedly, probably talking to his mother. After a few minutes, he ended the call and stared at the envelope like it might bite him. Finally, he opened it. I watched his face change as he read. Confusion first, then disbelief, then what looked like panic. He shuffled through the papers. The deed, my father's will, the documentation showing the house had been mine before we ever met. His mother had been demanding I host Thanksgiving in a house she had no claim to, in a home that was mine alone. His phone must have rung because he answered it, and even through the security camera, I could see him shouting. He held up the papers to the camera as if whoever was on the other end could see them. 20 minutes later, Margaret's Lexus screeched into the driveway. She stormed into the house with Patricia and Tom in tow. The living room camera captured the scene, Michael showing them the papers, Margaret snatching them from his hands, Patricia pacing like a caged animal, and Tom, surprisingly, sitting calmly on the sofa, almost smiling. Margaret's mouth moved rapidly, her face reddening. She threw the papers on the coffee table and pointed at Michael, clearly berating him. Patricia joined in, ganging up on him. But Tom picked up the documents and read through them carefully, occasionally shaking his head. Then Tom said something that made Margaret will on him. They argued, Tom standing his ground while Margaret grew more agitated. Finally, Tom stood up, said something directly to Michael and walked out. Through the front door camera, I saw him get in his car and drive away, leaving Margaret and Patricia staring after him in shock.
My phone rang. Ashley.
Sarah, you're not going to believe what just happened. Tom walked out. How did you? Never mind. Yes, he walked out. But before he did, he told Margaret that she'd been a bully for years and that you were the only one with the courage to call her on it. He said he was done enabling her, and if she wanted a relationship with him, she'd have to earn it. Tom said that. Sarah, this is like watching a dynasty crumble. Patricia's husband just texted me asking if we want to grab drinks and discuss exit strategies from the Richardson empire. I never meant for.
Stop.
Don't you dare apologize. This reckoning was decades overdue. Margaret's ruled through fear and manipulation for so long, everyone forgot they had choices. You reminded us. After Ashley hung up, I sat in stunned silence. The ripple effects were spreading far beyond what I'd anticipated. Guilt warred with satisfaction, but ultimately, satisfaction won. These were adults who'd chosen to enable Margaret's behavior. If my refusal to continue playing along had exposed the dysfunction, that wasn't my fault. I spent the afternoon at a small-town antique shop, browsing peacefully through items that had survived longer than most relationships. The elderly owner, a man with kind eyes and gnarled hands, asked if I was looking for anything special. Just looking, I said. Taking a break from family drama. He chuckled. Holidays bring out the best and worst in families. Though in my experience, the worst usually needs to come out. Like lancing a boil, painful but necessary. That's actually very wise. 60 years of marriage teaches you things. My wife's family hated me for the first decade. Thought I wasn't good enough. Then one Christmas, I just stopped trying to prove myself to them. You know what happened? What? They finally saw me. The real me, not the version of me trying to earn their approval. Some of them liked what they saw, some didn't. But at least it was honest. I bought a small ceramic bird from a shop, a bluebird that reminded me of the ones my mother used to feed. It felt like a sign, a tiny symbol of the freedom I was finding. When I returned to the cabin, I had 17 more missed calls and a voicemail from a number I didn't recognize. Curiosity won again. Mrs. Richardson, or should I say Miss Chen, since apparently you never legally changed your name. This is Hamilton Pierce from Pierce and Associates. I've been retained by Mrs. Margaret Richardson to discuss the situation regarding the property at 452 Maple Drive. Please contact me at your earliest convenience to discuss a resolution that benefits all parties. A lawyer. She'd actually called a lawyer. I forwarded the voicemail to Diana with a single question mark. Diana called back laughing.
Pierce?
She hired him, Pierce? Oh, this is perfect. He's a golf buddy of her husband's who does real estate law. I'll eat him for breakfast. Want me to call him? What could she possibly think she'll accomplish? Intimidation. It's her only move. She's hoping legal threats will scare you into compliance. How little she knows you. That evening, I cooked myself a simple dinner, pasta with butter and garlic, a salad, bread from the local bakery. I ate slowly, savoring each bite, remembering all the elaborate meals I'd cooked that I'd been too exhausted to enjoy. As night fell, I sat by the fire and opened my journal. Tomorrow I would go home. Tomorrow I would face whatever awaited me. But tonight, I wrote. Things I've learned this week. 1. Boundaries aren't cruel, they're necessary too. People will treat you exactly as badly as you allow them to. 3. Marriage without respect is just legal roommates. 4. My mother was right, I'm nobody's doormat. 5. Sometimes the best gift you can give someone is the truth. 6. Freedom tastes like pasta eaten in peaceful silence. 7. I am enough, just as I am. My phone buzzed with one final text from an unknown number. I almost didn't read it, but something made me look. Sarah, this is Robert Richardson, Margaret's brother-in-law. Heard about Thanksgiving. Reminded me why I haven't spoken to Margaret in 5 years. You did what I never had the courage to do, stood up to her in front of everyone. If you need a reference for the divorce lawyer, I know a good one. Welcome to the free world. Even Margaret's extended family was reaching out. The avalanche I'd started was still gathering momentum. Tomorrow would bring confrontation, possibly the end of my marriage, certainly the end of something. But as I banked the fire and headed to bed in the cozy cabin bedroom, I felt ready. Whatever came next, I would face it as myself, not the diminished version I'd become, but the woman my mother raised me to be. Sunday arrived with rain, a steady drizzle that turned the world soft and gray. Fitting weather for what felt like a funeral, the death of who I'd been for the past 3 years. I packed slowly, carefully, treating each item like it mattered. The clothes that had made me feel like myself, the books that had kept me company, the journal that had witnessed my transformation. The ceramic bluebird I wrapped in tissue paper and tucked safely in my purse, my talisman for whatever came next. The drive home was meditative, the rain creating a cocoon around my car. I didn't play music, didn't need the distraction. My thoughts were clear, my resolve solid. Whatever awaited me at home, I was ready. I pulled into the garage at exactly 2 p.m. Michael's car was there, of course. I wondered if he'd been waiting by the window like a dog anticipating its owner's return. The thought should have made me sad, but it just made me tired. The house felt different when I walked in. Or maybe I felt different in it. The kitchen was clean, suspiciously so. Michael had either hired someone or Margaret had sent Patricia to tidy up, to erase evidence of Thanksgiving's chaos. Sarah? Michael's voice came from the living room. Not angry, not pleading. Defeated. I found him on the sofa, looking smaller somehow. He'd shaved, changed clothes, made an effort. But his eyes were hollow, rimmed with the kind of exhaustion that comes from forced revelation. You're back, he said unnecessarily. I said I would be. We stared at each other across the coffee table, where the envelope's contents were spread out like evidence in a trial. Why didn't you tell me about the house? He asked finally. When would I have? When you and your mother were redecorating without asking me. When she was criticizing my choice of curtains in my own home. When you were telling me I should be grateful to live in such a nice place. He flinched. We need to talk. Yes, we do. But first, I need you to understand something. This isn't a negotiation. I'm not asking for permission to be treated with respect in my own home.
I'm stating facts.
This house is mine. My boundaries are non-negotiable. Your mother is no longer welcome here unless she can treat me as an equal. And you need to decide if you're my husband or her son because you can't be both anymore. That's not fair. Fair. I laughed, but there was no humor in it. Was it fair when I spent 14 hours cooking last Thanksgiving while you all sat around drinking wine? Was it fair when your mother called me the help at your cousin's wedding? Was it fair when you told me I was overreacting every time I tried to tell you how miserable I was? She's my mother, and I'm your wife. Or I was. I'm not sure what we are now. The doorbell rang before he could respond. We both froze, then Michael's face went pale. I didn't invite her, I swear. But I knew who it was before I opened the door. Margaret stood on my porch, yes, my porch, looking like she'd aged 5 years in 3 days. Patricia flanked her, but there was something different in her stance, less confident, more uncertain. We need to talk, Margaret announced, trying to push past me into the house. I didn't move. No, we don't. I beg your pardon? I said no. This is my house, and you're not welcome here. Her face went through its familiar cycle of emotions, landing on indignant rage. How dare you? I dare because this is my property, and I decide who enters. You can say whatever you need to say from right there. Patricia started to speak, but Margaret raised a hand to silence her. They stood in the rain, getting progressively wetter, while I remained dry in my doorway. The power shift was so obvious, even Margaret couldn't deny it. You've destroyed this family, she hissed. No, I've revealed what this family really is. There's a difference. You manipulated my son. Your son is a grown man who chose his mother over his wife at every opportunity. That's not manipulation. That's disappointment. Michael appeared behind me. Mom, just go. Margaret's shock was almost comical. You're taking her side? There shouldn't be sides. Michael's voice cracked. But you created them. You've been creating them for years, and I was too much of a coward to stop you. It was the first honest thing I'd heard him say in months. Margaret's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. Patricia tugged at her arm. Mom, let's go. This isn't helping. But Margaret had one more card to play. If you proceed with this rebellion, you'll never see this family again. No holidays, no birthdays, no support when you need it. You'll be alone. I thought about the messages from Tom, from Ashley, from aunts and cousins, and even Margaret's brother-in-law. I won't be alone. I'll just be free of you. She turned on her heel and marched back to her car, Patricia scurrying after her. As they drove away, Michael and I stood in the doorway, neither of us sure what to say. Finally, he spoke. I got a call from Tom. He wants to know if we'd consider hosting Christmas. Just him and Ashley and a few cousins who are, in his words, Team Sarah. There's a Team Sarah? Apparently. Even Aunt Louise called. Said she's been waiting 40 years for someone to put Margaret in her place. We went back inside, sitting on opposite ends of the sofa like strangers negotiating a treaty. I need you to know, I said carefully, that I'm not sure our marriage can survive this. Too much has happened. Too much has been revealed. I know. His voice was small. I know I failed you. I see it now. Every time I chose the easy path, chose her feelings over yours, I failed you. Seeing it now doesn't erase 3 years of diminishment. No, it doesn't. But maybe it could be a beginning? If you're willing, I'd like to try. Really try. Therapy, boundaries with my mother, the whole thing. I want to be the husband you deserve, not the son she raised. I studied his face, looking for the man I'd fallen in love with before Margaret's influence had twisted us both into shapes we didn't recognize. I need time, I said finally.
And space.
I'll stay in the master bedroom. You can have the guest room. We'll try therapy, but I make no promises. And your mother is banned from this house until she provides a genuine apology. Not to you, not through you, but to me directly. That could take forever. Then it takes forever. He nodded slowly. What about Christmas? We'll see. One day at a time. That evening, as Michael cooked dinner for the first time in our entire marriage, badly but with effort, my phone buzzed with a message from Ashley. Heard you're home. Heard Margaret got turned away at the door. Heard Michael finally grew a spine. Proud of you. Tom wants to start a new tradition. Orphan holidays for those of us who've escaped the Richardson regime. You in. I smiled, the first real smile in days. I'm in. As I lay in bed that night in my house, in my room, on my terms, I thought about the journey from Thursday morning to Sunday night. 4 days that had dismantled 3 years of dysfunction. The ceramic bluebird sat on my nightstand, catching the moonlight through the window. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, therapy sessions, difficult conversations, the slow work of either rebuilding a marriage or ending one with dignity. Margaret would likely escalate before she ever apologized. The family divide would deepen before it healed. But none of that mattered tonight. Tonight I was home. Not the home I'd left Thursday morning, that had been Michael's mother's annex, a place where I existed but didn't live. This was my home now, where my boundaries were walls and my self-respect was the foundation. I picked up my journal one last time and wrote, Day 4 of freedom. I didn't lose a family. I lost a chain. I didn't gain solitude. I gained myself. I didn't destroy a marriage. I revealed what it really was. And if it can't survive the truth, it doesn't deserve to exist. My mother would be proud.
I'm proud.
For the first time in 3 years, I'm enough. I was always enough. The rain had stopped, leaving the world washed clean. Through the window, I could see stars appearing between the clouds. Tomorrow would come with all its complications, but tonight I was free. I closed the journal and turned off the light. In the darkness, I whispered the words I'd been afraid to say for so long. I choose me. And for the first time in 3 years, that was exactly the right choice. Have you ever stayed silent while being disrespected just to keep the peace? And what did it cost you in the end? If Sarah's story of reclaiming her self-worth resonated with you, hit that like button and subscribe for more stories about finding the courage to choose yourself when everyone expects you to choose them.